Hi, I'm Sophie Cripe, and I'm the dramaturg for this production of Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. The play starts out with my favorite line in the whole play, which is, tonight I'm wearing tight, tight jeans, and we're going to talk about some serious, serious shit. And this play really is about some very serious things. Everything from the Indian removal to politicians to politics to the difficulties of being a wife on the home front when your husband's off at war or in politics is what this play is about. The play takes a lot of literary license with history. Things like Twinkies, cell phones, pizza, and American Idol were not around during the time of Andrew Jackson, but they are in the play. There's a lot of interesting facts brought up in the play, and I'm just going to touch real quickly on some of the facts that were true. First of all, Andrew Jackson's father was actually killed by logs falling on him. In the very first part of the play, there's a lot of references by his father to logs. Andrew Jackson did commit bigamy because he married his beautiful wife, Rachel, before she was legally divorced from her first husband, who was abusive. Now, they weren't legally divorced. She thought they were. In fact, in that time, they actually had to pass a law of Congress to develop the concept of divorce. They have then remarried and were together for 34 happy years. Sadly, Rachel died 2 months before Andrew took office in Washington, which he was really very, very upset about, and never looked at another woman and was loyal to her memory for the rest of his life in office. In fact, Rachel's cousin and her husband were his official host and hostess with him in the White House. He was a gambler. He even owned many racehorses and a racetrack for a time. He did fire his entire cabinet. In fact, he was the only president to ever do that. He did adopt an orphaned Indian boy named Lincoln, whom he raised as his own till sadly at age 16, Lincoln died of tuberculosis. He did found the Democratic Party as we know it. In fact, an interesting fact that isn't in the play is the fact that his opponents took great pleasure in calling Andrew Jackson a jackass. He thought it was so funny that he adopted the donkey, and it's still the symbol for the Democratic Party. As a general, he protected his troops like the hickory in the forest protects the other trees, and so that's why he was called Old Hickory. He actually did the first campaign posters as we know them, and did the first political campaigns going out and doing what we call stump speeches. And he also, unfortunately, had the first and worst mudslinging campaign in the history of politics. He was the first president not from the Ivy League. And as it mentions in the play, "We'll all meet in heaven," were his last words. Now, also very early in the play, Jackson mentions the fact that here's the thing about the Indians. Well, I think there's 2 points that are very important as far as the Indians in this play go. First of all, when I was doing research, one of the things I found was that the Indians like to be called Indians and not Native Americans. Native Americans is a political term that was developed to describe an entire class of indigenous people, but it also includes the Alaskans, Eskimos, the Hawaiians, and the American Samoans. So not all Native Americans are Indians. Indians like to be called Indians or American Indian or Cherokee Indian, or whatever their tribe is. Second, Andrew cannot be totally given the blame for the Indian removal. The concept of Indian removal was started with Thomas Jefferson, who in fact did the Louisiana Purchase partly for the idea that it would be a wonderful place for the Indians to move to. He found that assimilating into the culture was something that was just extremely difficult for the Indians. And while the Indian Removal Act was passed while Jackson was in office, it was proposed by John Quincy Adams, the president before him. And the actual Trail of Tears happened after Andrew Jackson left office, although he did propose the concept of having federal troops remove the Indians. Last but not least, Andrew Jackson is a lot about politics and politicians. And how do we think of politicians? And how do we think ourselves as citizens in this country? And what do we really want? And do we know what we really want? A lot of these questions you can think about after you've seen the play. As my friend Joe Damaskowitz, who is critic for the New York Times, said, it shows that politics are a free-for-all filled with good people and opportunists, jerks and jackals, then and now. Like I said, some serious, serious shit.